Mr. S. Gurumurthy, who is the editor of the Tughlaq. He is also, viewers, an ideologue and an author, and as I told you, viewers, has been intrinsically involved in this civilizational battle. Now, I am very honored to have you with us, Mr. Gurumurthy. You, of course, require no introductions. I want to ask you some basic questions tonight. And please pardon me if I sound very simplistic, but sometimes those are the easiest questions to supply complex answers to. So, Mr. Gurumurthy, how should ordinary Indians view the January 22nd Ram Lalla Pran Pratishtha in Ayodhya? Is it, viewers, as many have claimed today, and Mr. Gurumurthy, a political event? Or is it really about reclaiming India's civilizational history?
See, as someone who was very closely involved with the Ram Temple movement from 1980s, it is something which we imagined would be the civilization revival of India. But the entire secular polity stood against it. It was a massive challenge. Looking back and looking at where we stand today, see, unless you have an overview of what happened in the last 4 decades, you will not be able to understand the significance of this great moment. So, I recall that the movement is being reduced to just a political movement. It has been there for 400 years. You must have heard recently the in 50 villages around Ayodhya, the Suryavanshis, they had given up wearing the turban.
Turban, yes.
Till the Ram Janmabhoomi is recovered and the temple was rebuilt. 400 years they did not wear the pagadi. They have started wearing now. You can understand how ordinary Indians reacted to the destruction of the Ram temple at that time, and from then onwards, continuously there have been efforts to recover it. This is historically recorded. There were military attempts, there were diplomatic attempts. In 1934, there was an armed rebellion in which many were killed. And in 1885, a British judge recorded, when a case was filed for its recovery, he went and saw, and he said it is so sad that Babur should have built a mosque on a site held nearby Hindus. But I cannot give any legal remedy. So far, time has moved. You know, all this is completely whitewashed. And as if the mosque has been demolished to build a temple, it was never a mosque. In 1885, the judge records that it is an unoccupied building. There was nobody. In 1934, there was nobody. And it has been in disuse. The government of India records show that it was a disputed structure. But suddenly, in mid 1992, the government of India declared it was a mosque. That is how the whole world, India, Muslims were told that a mosque is being targeted. You can understand the conspiracy. I mean, we were all witnessing what was happening at the time. We were all seeing how an anti-Hindu, anti-national, anti-truth narrative was being built at that time. And we fought through the whole thing. And of course, history moves in a very strange way. It doesn't move as politicians want, as even historians want, as media wants. as the intellectuals want. It moves in its own way. This is what Arnold Toynbee said. In 1957, he warned that don't keep provocative symbols of invaders because it's an eyesore. There is bound to be reaction. And he also showed the example of the Polish government demolishing the Russian Orthodox Cathedral in the center of Warsaw. And he, he went 2 days after it was destroyed. The Russian occupation resulted in the center of Warsaw being turned into the Russian Orthodox Cathedral. It is within Christianity. It is Russia versus Poland. Poland demolished the Russian Orthodox Cathedral and built the Roman Catholic Church. And this demolition was given running commentary over the Polish radio. This is what Arnold Toynbee says. This is how history reacts. And he said that the Ayodhya, Mathura, and Kashi, these three so called religious structures, are not religious structures, they were symbols of domination over India. And he said, of course, you Indians are keeping it. And he paid a left-handed compliment for this. But the entire narrative built on false stories, vote bank politics, and then this resulted in huge consolidation of all nationalist forces. And maybe that is the will of the divine. There was no other way
Right.
nationalist forces would have joined together.
Well,
And so I view the Round Temple movement.
okay, let me ask you, Mr. Gurumurthy, we are often assailed by anti-Sanatana hate from some quarters in the south, especially in Tamil Nadu, but the Prime Minister is carrying blessings from Lipakshi in Andhra Pradesh and a message of devotion tomorrow from Guruvuru to Ram, who is Sanatana's Maryada Purush. How does one decode this upsurge in devotion for Ram in the south, where you belong, where you hail from?
See, Dravidianism was political and it was promoted long before India attained freedom. It was to divide India. A racial theory was invented, and after as it slowly turned against Hinduism via anti-Brahminism. I can tell you there is a community, the most powerful and most, what I can say, numerically strong community is the one-year community. And that records itself as the one community which protected during the Mahabharata the hidden arms of the Pandavas during their Ajnatavas. And it was hidden in a Vanni tree, and they safeguarded the Vanni tree, and that is why they are called Vanniers. This is what their Purana says. So, in Tamil Nadu, there is intrinsic relationship between Ramayana, Mahabharata, and the local literature. You know, the earliest Tamil literature speak of Ramayana, Rama, Sita, and they were all Sangam literature 2,200 years ago. Purananuru, Agananuru, the Silappatikaram, Manimehalai. These are all the oldest Tamil literature. Remove them, there is no Tamil. They speak of Rama. And you see Rameshwaram as the core center of Rama Bhakti. And Dravidianism is purely anti-national movement which targeted the Hindus, which targeted the North, and that doesn't represent the beliefs, feelings, emotions, and the way of life of the Tamil people. If you see, I travel throughout the country. If there is any state which is most Hinduized in terms of belief, practices, traditions, value systems, family, role of women, and the respect that the youngsters have for elders
Now,
is Tamil Nadu. So Dravidianism is a political uh, distortion in Tamil Nadu.
okay.
It has nothing to do with the Tamil people's beliefs and way of life.
So let's shift focus just a bit, because there are other manufactured arguments, but one of them is a very direct charge. What do you make of the claim, for example, that January 22nd event is a Modi event and therefore it is legitimate to boycott it, sir?
If you look at what happened in Somnath in 1951 and in 1947, the Somnath temple reconstruction started, and it was initiated by a cabinet resolution of the Free Indian government headed by Pandit Nehru. He may not have liked it, but the entire cabinet wanted the government of India to build the Somnath temple.
Yes.
There was a mosque in that place.
Yeah.
It had to be removed. It was removed. Why it was removed? Because Patel and Munshi met Mahatma Gandhi and said Somnath has to be built. Gandhi had written in 1925, if I remember right, in February in Young India, which Balbir Punch quoted in his latest and brilliant book which he has written, that if a mosque was built on a Hindu land, the Hindus can demolish it. It was Mahatma Gandhi's words. And that was why the masjid was removed, temple was built, the government of India offered to fund it. Mahatma Gandhi said, don't fund from the government, it must be by the people. And after Patel passed also, the government carried on the job of building the Somnath temple. And it was Rajendra Prasad who declared the temple open. He participated in the Prana Pratishtha. Was it a Congress project? Was it a political project? Was it Rajendra Prasad project? The whole movement for Ram Temple was carried on by people, and the people whose representative who carried on the struggle, and
Right.
those people's representative is the Prime Minister. That is the fortune. It is not Narendra Modi in his personal capacity. He represents the movement which led to the construction of the Ram Temple, change in the polity. And this whole thing has been endorsed constitutionally by a unanimous judgment of the Supreme Court. And the law to acquire the land for the Ram Temple was passed by the Congress Party in 1993. And that was implemented by the Supreme Court. They said that land is already available. Now you hand it over to the Hindus after having found that there was a temple beneath the mosque which was demolished. And so it all happened by a convergence of historical forces, political forces, constitutional forces, and the Supreme Court judgment sealed it. And it is a project which is a convergence of the entire Indian civilizational, political, constitutional,
Okay.
and state forces. And the Prime Minister represents it in more than one way. As Prime Minister and as a person who represents the movement that brought the temple into existence against insurmountable odds.
Okay.
The whole world was told the Hindus have demolished a mosque, which is fake, which is false. And Hindus had to bear that bad name because of our own political divisions, the wrong narrative, false narrative, left narrative. The Hindus had borne so much pain and difficulties, and it is that movement finds its representative in power. That is moral and constitutional authority to be part of and lead the Pran Pratishtha.
Well, Mr. Gurumurthy, I have to commend you tonight because you have come up with factual arguments. All arguments are fact-based, very persuasive arguments, viewers. And I sincerely hope that all of you will spread the word. Please retweet these clips, very important, or somehow spread them through the larger national ecosystem. Viewers, Ayodhya is awaiting its Pratishtha, quite literally. It's not just the Ramlalla idols. What does Ayodhya mean for Bharat? Let's speak to Amish Tripathi. He needs really no introduction. He's a diplomat. He is also an author. He has written bestsellers. He has a view, and an intelligent one. And therefore, let's open this up. Bhaks await January 22nd. One of them is Mr. Tripathi. Let's decode this renaissance that is going to happen right before our eyes. Ayodhya's rise and Bharat, what does it actually mean? It's being billed as the Nagari of Nyay. Now, Mr. Tripathi, thank you very much for speaking to me on the hard facts. Ram is described as a universal symbol of inclusivity. Can you elaborate on this?
Look, it's very easy to be inclusive to those who are your own.
Right.
The point is, how do you behave with those who are not your own, who are not from your family, who are not from your own community? We see many examples of that in all versions of the Ram. We are all aware of course, across India and across communities with Nishad Raj, with Ma Shabri, how inclusive Lord Ram was with his kingdom. At times, he was more inclusive with the people of his kingdom than with even at the cost of his own family, right? But I think the true example of inclusivity you see if how an individual behaves, or how a god or any person behaves with those who oppose him, right? Look at the way Lord Ram behaved with Ravan's family, even after Ravan's death, right? With Vibhishan, with the entire, they were all treated with respect, right? Even Ravan's dead body was treated with respect. He was given full Vedic funeral, the ceremonies. When he came back home, Ma Keke, who was responsible for him being banished. How did Lord Ram behave? All of us know that. He bent down and touched Ma Keke's feet. He had no anger, no angst. That to me is true inclusivity.
Now, can all religious communities feel secure in a Ram Rajya, in a putative Ram Rajya? The BJP says it wants to usher in a Ram Rajya.
Look, I won't get into politics of it, but if it's run according to the principles of Ram Rajya, yes, every single community is a part of it. I mean, and there's this lovely line that Lord Ram himself had said in the Ramcharitmanas, Purush Napunsak Nari va Jiva Charachar Koi Sarv Bhav Bhaja Kapata Taji Mohi Param Priya Soi. That any man, any woman, any transgender as well, any living being, any plant, any animal, you give up deceit, love each other, come to me, you're my people. You can't get a more inclusive statement, than that. Even in terms of practice today, you find so many, I'm doing a documentary on the Ram Janmabhoomi ji, and there are so many Muslims who are coming to Ayodhya and taking darshan out there. Among them is also Irfan Saab, who was one of the litigants. And he has said that he wants to take the darshan of Ram Lalla. And this to me shows inclusivity. Also, one of the things to learn from Lord Ram is that the nation will be united and strong when we are protected from external enemies. There's a lovely line that Lord Ram had said once again in the Ramayana, Bhai Bena Hoy Na Preet, that without fear, there is no true love. So our enemies should fear us, so that they should know that we will not go looking for a fight. But if anyone attacks us, or puts any Indian anywhere in the world in harm's way, they should know that India will come for the protection of their Indian. And we've shown that repeatedly. When Indians have got stuck in war zones, we've got Indians back. These are the principles of Ram Rajya.
So you're saying that Ram's views and his principles have practical application even today. Okay, let me just go back to what you said. You said that every community has some sort of link to Lord Ram. Can you be more specific with examples of their links?
Within the Ramayana itself, as one spoke of different communities across India when he traveled, I gave the example of Nishadraj, I gave the example of Shabrima, I gave the example of how he treated the Mayuranga dynasty as well, that is Ravan's dynasty, even after the death of Ravan, how he treated the people of Lanka itself, who he didn't behave like an invader who was fighting his enemy. The people of Lanka, who had nothing to do with the battle, were treated with honor and respect. How he treated the Vanars, the respect he gave to the Vanar Sena, to Sugriv, to all of them. This is what actually shows inclusivity. Now, obviously, one cannot give examples which would be related to Islam or Christianity because those religions didn't exist at
Didn't
that
exist.
point of time. But the principles are very clear. And once again, one is seeing the example of this in the modern day in people like Irfan Saab and people like K.K. Mohammed Saab, who's an archaeologist, whose work helped prove the existence of, was one of the things which helped prove the existence of the temple in the court. And K.K. Mohammed Saab had said, in our documentary, I'm paraphrasing, he said so beautifully that Babar was a foreigner. He was from Uzbekistan. Baki was a foreigner. I'm an Indian Muslim. What do I have to do with them? You know,
Okay.
and this to me is the spirit of Indian togetherness, Indian unity
Indian
within our diversity.
Indian unity. Well, the BJP says that, look, they're not appropriating Lord Ram, but they're certainly appropriating the values that he espouses, and therefore, through that, they want to be the conduit of the establishment of Ram Rajya. But as you know, there is a whole ecosystem that says that Gandhiji, for example, his view of Ram Rajya is very different from the BJP's view of Ram Rajya. Is this a correct assessment on the ecosystem, the left liberal, so-called left liberal ecosystem's part?
Look, I mean, I won't get into politics, but I would say that everyone's conception of Ram Rajya can be different.
Okay.
So, for a very simple example, I mean, again, I'm not getting into politics, but Mahatma Gandhi, BJP, Congress, all of them, I guess they would all agree on one of the principles that Mahatma Gandhi had taken up, that we must work against the caste system, that we must treat all as equal, which, as I said earlier, was actually Lord Ram's philosophy as well. In this, you'd find people across the political spectrum agree with Mahatma Gandhi, but in some cases maybe there's a difference because, for example, Mahatma Gandhi was a proponent of non-violence. Would he have advocated a battle with, say, with our western neighbor, over national issues? Maybe not. And maybe that would be closer to the Jain version of the Ramayana. I'm sure where there's a Jain version of the Ramayana in which Lord Ram is completely non-violent. But in the Valmiki Ramayana or the Ramcharitmanas, Lord Ram is extremely inclusive and kind with those who deserve it. But when he had to fight with enemies, he fought. He didn't go looking for fights, right? But if he had no choice, he tried everything possible to avoid a fight, like he did with Ravan as well. He sent an emissary in the form of Prince Sangad, to try and make peace without war, but that was rejected. Then Lord Ram had no choice; he fought. So, in this way, modern Indians do agree that perhaps with our Western neighbor or anyone else, if someone attacks us, we will fight back. In
So,
this way, perhaps maybe we are different from Mahatma Gandhi.
well, Amish Tripathi, thank you for speaking to me on the hard facts. Very balanced point of view, viewers, but very well researched. Provides answers to a lot of questions that are being asked, and I hope out of this conversation you got the answers. We'll take a very short break. Ashwin Sanghi, of course, yours best-selling author. He needs no introductions. He's also a commentator, a columnist who has written extensively on issues that touch our everyday lives. Now, the reason we are speaking to you, Mr. Sanghi, tonight is to ask you on speaking to the minority community tonight and telling us what is the message from Ram Nagri to the Muslim minority community. So thank you, Mr. Sanghi, for speaking to me, and I want to begin by asking you, January 22 is being seen as Bharat's pivot to its civilizational past. Now, please put this into context for our viewers, specifically those who are today a little perturbed and might be constituting the minority.
Well, Rahul, first of all, thanks for having me here. But, there are, the Pran Pratishtha is ultimately, what is it? It's ultimately imbuing life into the deity. But in some ways, this Pran Pratishtha is also injecting fresh energy into Sanatan Dharma. So in that sense, this event cannot be considered just a religious moment, but a civilizational one. Some may see the rituals as triumphalism of sorts, but frankly, I see it as a celebration of survival. So many of the belief systems that sort of profess about one true God have had a historical advantage over pagan belief systems. Whether it was Zoroastrianism in Iran, or it was the Mithraic cults of Rome, or whether it was the Egyptian deities and the Greek gods, all of those were wiped out. So in that sense, the rise of Ram Janmabhoomi and the consecration of Ram Lalla symbolizes survival more than anything else.
Survival more than anything else, because the legacy would have been extinguished. Now we can go into why and all of that, and I don't want to dredge up old wounds, but let me just quickly ask you, could this movement have succeeded without having acquired a political avatar or color?
In some ways, Rahul, I don't know. Before I answer that question, I really wish that it hadn't taken on a political dimension, because this is something which I really would have loved in case this had, instead of being a political dispute leading to a judicial issue, I wish that this was something which had been arrived at in the manner of a negotiation between two communities. I mean, we all know that the estimate of Sitaram Goel is around 3,000 temples having been destroyed. And obviously, you cannot right every wrong of history. But there are a few places, whether they are Somnath, Ayodhya, Kashi, or Mathura, where there is very strong sentimental value attached. And to see the destruction that has happened in the past, you don't need to go to these places. You can simply go to the Quwwatul Islam Mosque next to the Qutub Minar, where there is a signboard saying that 27 Hindu and Jain temples were demolished in order to build the mosque. Now, as I said, you cannot attempt to right every wrong, but then neither can you expect that a wounded civilization can ignore all its open wounds. So it, in some ways, baffles me that why could India's Muslim leaders not rise above this and say, hey, listen, there are maybe 2 or 3 places where a negotiated settlement needs to happen because of the sentimental value that these places hold for the Hindus. It's almost as though the entire community meekly surrendered to a group of antiquated leaders, and that is what really pains me, that I wish that this had been in the nature of a settlement between the two communities that could have in some ways strengthened those bonds.
Well, so you're essentially saying that politicization was necessary because of the entrenched obduracy on part of a minority community and its political patrons. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And, think about this, Rahul. I'm going to elaborate on this for a minute more. Look at the world around us. Countries that were once welcoming migration from Muslim lands are today shutting their doors. Look at the rise of the right-leaning parties in Europe, and look at the groundswell of support for Trump in America. All of these should be eye-openers. Bharat, in its own clumsy and very messy way, has welcomed and assimilated all faiths through the centuries. And Sanatan Dharma, with all its alleged faults, has been really instrumental in establishing a plural ethos. Now, this was the moment for the Muslims of India to lead the way in establishing a gentler and a more flexible and a more updated and a kinder version of Islam. Remember, it sounds odd to you maybe, but the truth is that it took 14 centuries for the Reformation to happen in Christianity.
That's true.
And
Martin
today,
Luther,
Islam
1400.
is exactly 14 centuries from its origin. So this is the starting point of that time when it should undergo that reformation. And who better to lead that reformation than the very enlightened Indian Muslim?
okay.
Because some of the greatest movement of knowledge happened from ancient Bharat through the Arab traders, merchants, as well as the intellectuals from the Arab world. So this is a reformation which needs to happen, and I wish that this had been the starting point of that reformation.
Well, so supremacism should be eschewed, and if reformation, however, Mr. Sanghi, doesn't happen, will the restoration of Ram Lalla to his Nagri heal wounds of, to paraphrase you, of Hindu civilization that you are referring to?
Well, as I started out by saying that, India's political landscape is, it's loud and messy, Rahul. The truth of the matter is that this event has been simultaneously celebrated, opposed, revered, derided, and even feared. Even the four Shankaracharyas have spoken in conflicting voices. But then the truth is that debate and dissent are the very essence of Sanatan Dharma. We've never recognized any single church, pope, or holy book as denoting our supreme authority. And who denotes or who decides whether the Shaiva or Vaishnava or Shakta path is right? And how did the Buddha come to be absorbed as the ninth avatar of Vishnu? And which of the 300 versions of the Ramayana is right? And we have even the Rig Veda questioning whether God even knows the universe's origins. We have the Astika schools, such as the Sankhya, questioning the very existence of God. So the disagreements and the noise around the Ram Mandir may carry on, but all of this noise should be celebrated as symbols of the plurality and the very contradictions that make Sanatan Dharma.
That is actually very well put, viewers. I think you just heard Smita Prakash talking about the fact that India is a noisy democracy and therefore you hear all these pluralities of opinions. But let me ask you, Mr. Sanghi, Ayodhya is behind us. So Muslim intent now will be tested again, at least in two other contexts, Mathura and Kashi. What should be the community's approach here now?
No, I genuinely believe that, as I said earlier, I believe that if the leadership of the Muslim community had been far thinking, then they would have used the opportunity of Ram Janmabhoomi to actually cement their ties with the majority by proactively working towards a resolution of these two or three disputed sites.
Okay.
Now, the problem is that by adopting a rigid posture on the Babri Masjid issue, they painted themselves into a corner. And as you rightly said, the disputes in Kashi and Mathura are no less contentious.
They're before the Supreme Court.
What was that? The Places of Worship Act of 1991. The idea was to freeze the religious character of various places using 1947 as a cutoff year. But when you become obstinate regarding key places, then it will open the floodgates to litigation regarding many more spots. So do really Indian Muslims need to fight over these 2 or 3 spots, or would they rather fight over 2 or 300 spots? What really is my fear is that now you may have the possibility of many, many more sites coming up for discussion. What could have been a very amicable settlement between two communities, between the two major communities of Bharat. Instead, it may not go in that direction, and that is something which I'm not too happy about.
Yeah, that is actually worrying, Mr. Sanghi. That's very worrying. Now, how do we sort of pull back from this brink? I mean, if you're saying that there's perhaps going to be a little bit more of a conflict, how do we resolve this, salvage this situation, for the lack of a better word, going forward?
Well, I mean, let me put it this way. I genuinely believe, Rahul, that in some ways, Ram transcends religion. I mean, how else do you explain Ram being described in 300 versions of a Ramayana? And even forget, let's say, Valmiki's Ramayana or Tulsidas's Ramcharitmanas or Vyasa's Adhyatma Ramayana, all the Hindu versions. But what explains, for example, Badauni's Persian version, the Razmanama, or the Mapila Ramayana, which was the Muslim Ramayana? And why is, for example, Indonesia, which is a country with the world's largest Muslim population, still celebrating a piece of literature called the Ramayana Kakavina with mask dances? Why does Angkor Wat have the most popular Ramayana scenes depicted on its wall? Why is Thailand's monarch still known as Rama the 10th? And, I mean, how many of us know that the ancient capital of Siam, and by the way, that word Siam itself comes from the word Sham, which is the complexion of Ram. And why was the capital known as Ayodhya? And why do Malaysian Muslims perform the shadow puppet show, which is based on the Hikayat Seri Rama? So in that sense, Ram may not be part of their religious identity, but he continues to be part of their cultural identity. And this is something which India's Muslims will also need to be able to come around to. That there are certain places which have a very strong emotional connect with the majority community. It is better to settle those 2 or 3 places rather than allowing this to be carried on and allowing matters to escalate where, the blanket protection that is offered today by the Places of Worship Act, suddenly we find that has suddenly been removed, and we now have a elongated period of legal disputes.
What eminent sense you actually make, Mr. Sanghi. Thank you. You've spoken very openly, and I think the viewers are getting a comprehensive sense. Mr. Sridhar, you need no introduction. You have been someone who has been talking about spiritual aspects for a while now. You write columns for various newspapers, and you have a point of view which is very, very well regarded. So how do you see the 3 temples in Tamil Nadu tie in with the Ramayana? Because what we are being told is that the Prime Minister is visiting those temples specifically that tie in with the Ramayana. So how do these 3 in Tamil Nadu tie in with the Ramayana?
Okay. Namaskaram, Rahul. Pleasure talking to you and to all the Astikas and the viewers through your channel. These 3 temples hold immense significance. That said, every temple in Bharatadesham has significance, Rahul. That said, when we trace the steps of Prabhu Sri Ramachandra, right from Uttar Pradesh, which is Ayodhya, and then he was asked to go on an exile for 14 years. Then he went across Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, some parts of Chhattisgarh. Some Astikas believe even Andhra and Telangana. Of course, he touched Karnataka because of Kishkindha, and then reached Tamil Nadu, the state of Tamil Nadu, and then built the Setu between Bharatadesham and Sri Lanka.
Okay.
These 3 temples. First is Srirangam. So Srirangam is a beautiful temple town situated in an island formed in the fresh waters of Kaveri. So we have immense references even in the Itihasa Sreshtham Srimad Ramayanam of Valmiki, that the Kula Dhanam, the Kula Deivam in India, in Bharatadesham, we have this Kalachar, this culture, the Sampradayam of having a family deity. So the family deity to the kings of the Ikshvaku race of Ayodhya was referred to as Narayana or Jagannatha. And this Narayana or Jagannatha, who was worshipped in Ayodhya as the Kula Devam of the Ikshvakus, was handed over by Prabhu Sri Ramachandra to his very favorite devotee, good friend Vibhishana. Vibhishana wanted to take this Divya Murti of Narayana or Jagannatha to Lanka. On his sojourn, he stopped by the banks of Kaveri, where another Chola king called as Dharmavarma was performing austerities for the Lord to come. Then the Lord said, to satisfy Vibhishana, I shall look south. I won't come to Lanka. I will look south from here, but I will love to stay here. Since that place is like an auditorium, like an amphitheater, like a place for both the god and the goddess, it is called Rangam. And especially for Mahalakshmi, it is called Sri Rangam. Okay. And the Lord, who was earlier referred to as Narayana or Jagannatha, was later called as Ranganatha from then on. So Ranganatha Swami temple in Sri Rangam in Tamil Nadu by the banks of Kaveri is a beautiful temple, the world's largest, oldest functioning temple. And when Modi ji comes, it is a beautiful commemoration of the bond that we share between the state of Tamil Nadu and the state of Uttar Pradesh. One. Point number two. After he took the Vanara Sainyam from Kishkindha across Tamil Nadu to the end of Tamil Nadu, when I say end, one side, when you look at the map, at one part of it, he had to seek the blessings and the permission, rather than saying blessings, the permission of Varuna, that is the ocean king. And he performed austerities for 3 days. When I say austerities, he went on a fast, Prayopavesham, towards which finally the king of the waters gives him permission and he builds the Setu. So the place where he reclined on a mat of Darbha grass is called Darbha Shayana Rama, and the kshetram is called Tirupullani. A few kilometers from it, when you cross the oceanic waters, is another island where you find the temple of Ramanatha Swami temple. Though there is no exact mention in the Ramayana, of course, certain Puranas like the Kurma Purana attribute that Rama worshipped Shiva in this kshetram. And since Rama worshipped Shiva, it is called Ramanatha Swami, and the kshetram is called Rameshwaram. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, in the Ramayana, when Rama narrates to Sita, he says, Atra Purvam Mahadevaha, I propitiated Mahadeva. Some take the Mahadeva Shabdam to be Lord Shiva, and some say it could be the oceanic king. That said, Rameshwaram is a very important Jyotirlinga Sthalam for many of the Shiva devotees, the Shaivites. And it also holds the record of having the longest corridor in this world. And our honorable ex-president, Abdul Kalam ji, belonged to this place. It's a beautiful island. And this temple has contributions made by the Setupati kings. Something very interesting about the Setupati kings. They were the kings who were responsible for protecting the Setu constructed under the directions of Rama between Bharatadesham and Lanka. So they were the Setupati kings. The third is the end of Rameshwaram, which is called Dhanush Koti. Around the 1960s, mid-1960s, there was a huge hurricane cyclone that devastated the town so that many people died, many people had to migrate. Today, you cannot call it a bustling town, yet there is a temple which the locals believe to have existed over 100 years. And that is the Kodanda Ramaswamy temple. And that kind of marks the end of Bharatadesham, from which you will have Lanka from then on. So I'm sure Modi ji must have had a great council and advisory team that tells him all these details. And he, of course, as usual, religiously, sincerely adheres to these practices, and coming down all the way south to say that Rama is not for one state, not for one region, not for one country. He's universal.
He's Sabke Ram. He's Sabke Ram, that's right. Now look, there is also a wider connect, of course, beyond Tamil Nadu with Lord Ram, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. For example, in the state of Karnataka, where many tourists visit as the ruins of Vijayanagara, the Hampi, that place was earlier referred to in the Ramayana times as Kishkindha. And we had those two famous brothers of the Vanara clan called Vali and Sugriva belonging to that region. So Karnataka has a connect with the Ramayana. And we also have many beautiful temples for Rama in the state of Karnataka. one that comes to my immediate memory is Hire Magaluru. We have heard of Chikka Magaluru. Chikka Magaluru means the town given to the little girl. Hire Magaluru means the town given to the older girl. So that Hire Magaluru, there's a beautiful temple of Prabhu Sri Ramachandra. And if you come to the state of Tamil Nadu itself, Rahul, there is a temple in a place called Madhurantakam, where he's called Yeri Kattaraman, the one who protected Sampradayam, and he was visible even to the British viceroys. Then we have a temple in Tillai Vadaham, where he's extremely pretty. Vaduvur is a place which is a must visit. I'm telling all the Bharatiyas, please have a glimpse of Rama and Vaduvur. There is a place close to Tanjavur called Punnainallur. There is a place called Pullambudangudi, and there is Velliyangudi, where he's Kolavil Raman and Balvil Raman. There is a place called Nedunkundram, where he's doing yoga. So Rama is found everywhere in Tamil Nadu except for the hearts of a few politicians. He's there in the hearts of all Astikas in the state of Tamil Nadu. Coming to the state of Andhra Pradesh, there is a kshetram called Vuntimetta. And this is the place where Potanna, a great Telugu poet, composed the Bhagavatam in the Telugu language. It's a beautiful place, a fulcrum of Vijayanagara architecture. We have the very famous, world famous temple called Bhadrachalam by the banks of Godavari in the state of Telangana, which was constructed. The Murti was handed over earlier, but it was constructed by a great Telugu poet and a devotee in the 15th century called Kancharala Goppanna or Bhadrachala Ramadas. Of course, the Honorable Prime Minister visited the Kshetram of Tirupprayar in Kerala, where it is a Ramaswamy temple. In be it Maharashtra, where we have a large section of the Aranya Kandam which took place, because Shurpanakha, Garbhabhangam, Kharadushana Vadam, which happened in the Janasthana region, which is the Nagpur region. Then we have Chhattisgarh, that carries the Dandakaranyam forest. So Rama spent 13 years in Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. Today there are two states, but in that region he spent 13 years, where he met the sages like Sutikshna, Sharabhanga, Agastya and Valmiki. And Uttar Pradesh is, of course, the place where Ayodhya is, where he met his closest friend Guha in Shringiverapuram. Then he met Bharadwaja at the Prayaga Kshetram. Then he went on an internship for 6 days with Vishwamitra, where he could execute the orders that were given to him. And Nepal has a great connection with Mithila Desham, where Sita originally belonged to. So he connects countries. Rama and Ramayana connect countries and regions.
Well, thank you very much. Very nice speaking with you as always. A fount of knowledge, Vedic scholar, viewers, Dushyant, Sridhar. Thank you very much for taking out that time.